imagining it's gonna be nice and fun. So, okay. So, alright, so it says, this one says, the smiley face killer, if he exists, he's one of the world's most prolific murderers. At least 25 deaths of young men are attributed to the smiley face killer, but most police departments say he doesn't exist. If there is a serial killer stalking college-aged men, the FBI insists. No, is there a serial killer stalking college-aged men? The FBI insists no one is drowning inebriated college males and leaving them behind a painted smiley face where he dumps the bodies. But no matter how many times officials try to squelch the theory, the rumor of the smiley face killer will not die and the bodies keep popping. The theory originated with two New York City police detectives, Kevin Ganon and Anthony Duarte. They concluded that the deaths of at least 45 young men by drowning have too many similarities to be unrelated. Although the theory began in connection with bodies which found in New York City, it spread to include murder cases from the Midwest. In at least a dozen cases, a painted smiley face was found near a body of water where a victim's corpse was dumped. Nearly all the victims from the supposed smiley face killer were white college men. The detectives speculate the motive may be jealousy, as all the men were good-looking, athletic, and academically successful. Because some of the deaths occurred the same night but in different states, the NYC detectives altered their theory slightly, believing that the murders were carried out by an organized gang of killers. They believed their theory enough to reportedly use their own personal money to continue the investigation when the funds dried up. The smiley face killer theory began with the 1997 death of 21-year-old Patrick McNeil. McNeil was last seen drinking with friends in a Manhattan bar. Volunteers plastered the city with thousands of missing flyers. McNeil's body was found 2 months later and 12 miles away near the entrance to the New York harbor. Police found no evidence of foul play, but detectives Gannon and Duarte were not convinced. They pledged to keep working on the case. Nearly all of the subsequent deaths have also been ruled accidental drownings involving alcohol. The FBI and several police organizations have researched the deaths and concluded there is no link. The Center for Homicide Research went so far as to publish an exhaustive report called the Drowning the Smiley Face Theory. It lists 18 reasons that the theory doesn't hold water. That was a disrespectful pun. By the way, that was a disrespectful pun, including the fact that smiley faces are a very common form of graffiti and that murdered by drowning is extremely rare. I didn't know that. But few criminologists agree with the detectives that there are too many similarities in the deaths to put it down to a pure coincidence. And there have been frequent requests to the FBI to pick up the investigation, including one in 2008 from a Wisconsin congressman. The smiley face killer was invoked as recently as 2016 after the drowning of a 24-year-old in Hoboken, Matthew, I'm going to say this wrong, Genovese, oh god, I'm so sorry, has last been seen drinking at a local pub with friends. Like so many other murders, his body shows no sign of foul play. Despite this, many Hoboken residents began to panic about a phantom serial killer possibly living among them. Despite this most recent case, even Gannon and Duarte have given up on their theory. After spending years and seemingly a significant chunk of their money on the smiley face killer theory, the pair stopped researching the case in 2012. The victims' families and a number of internet sleuths, however, still hold out hope that the smiley face killer theory will prove to be true. It would lend some sense of meaning to the deaths of many victims, many victims whose unexplained drownings still haunt some of their loved ones. That's crazy. That is actually insane. Okay. So this says the brutal Austin yogurt shop murders of 1991 remain unsolved was a murder scene that could have appalled the most hardened homicide detective. Oh god. Okay. In the early 1900s, the early 1990s, good lord. Okay, I can't read apparently. Austin, Texas was shell-shocked by a tragic, vicious. In the early 1990s, Austin, Texas was shell-shocked by a tragic, vicious crime. Late on December 6th, 1991, firefighters responded to reports of smoke rising from the I Can't Believe It's yogurt shop on West Anderson Lane. Once outside, the responders found a scene of unmitigated horror. Amidst the inferno were the brutalized bodies of 4 teenage girls, Amy Ayers, Jennifer Arbison, Sarah Arbison, and Elisa Thomas. I'm so sorry if I said anybody's name wrong. I'm not gonna say that. Yeah, okay. Let me go ahead and put a couple things out here. There are a few things I'm not gonna say. I have seen people do these, and they've done them tastefully, and I've seen some people do these, and they go a little too far. And, I'm not going to go that far. I will make that, that makes me uncomfortable, so we're gonna move on from that part. Ooh, okay, this one's rough. 3 were stacked atop each other and had been bound together with their own clothing before being shot in the head with a .22 caliber handgun. Okay. Wow, this was way more than I bargained for. Okay, alrighty. It was a murder that could have appalled even the most hardened homicide detective. Immediately, the public placed pressure on the authorities to catch whoever was responsible. 4 suspects, all teenagers themselves at the time, were charged with the crime 8 years later. Forrest Welburn, Maurice Pierce, Robert Springsteen, and Michael Scott. Grand juries, citing a lack of evidence, declined to indict Welburn. The charges against Pierce were also later dropped. Scott and Springsteen, however, were convicted in late 1999, and the pair had confessed to the crime. Wow, okay, saying they had committed the murders while the 2 others stood and watched. Scott was sentenced to life imprisonment. Springsteen, however, went to one of the best known and most feared places in Texas, death row, long before cracks began appearing in the case against them. They centered on the fact that their confessions, which they alleged had been coerced, were very detailed, too detailed for some people's liking. One of the yogurt shop case investigators, Detective Hector Polanco, was transferred off the case after allegations of his extorting similarity detailed confessions to an unrelated case. Okay, it didn't help that the Austin PD, when a photograph surfaced on the internet of footage of Scott's questioning, the image came from Austin PD's own camera, and it showed Detective Merle aiming a gun at Scott's head. Yo, what is happening in Texas, bro? By this point, the defendants have been sentenced to life and spent almost a decade in prison. The confession provided were, according to Run reports, stunningly detailed but decidedly false. The allegations against Polanco contributed to having Springsteen and Scott's cases reviewed and their convictions eventually overturned. Yow. There were a number of factors making investigations especially difficult. The Austin Police Department were relatively inexperienced in handling such horrific cases. The public pressures that went with them. They also faced a plethora of false confessions, useless information, and leads that went nowhere but still had to be checked. At one point, the investigation had a list of 342 potential perpetrators. That's an insane number of people that could have done such a heinous thing. That's crazy. All told, over 50 false confessions had to be debunked, including one from the serial killer Kenneth McDuff. He was executed in 1998 on an unrelated murder convictions. He made a confession on his execution day. He was known to be active in that area at the time of the crime and to the target teenagers. Even though his confession was most likely an effort to stay and gain to gain a stay of execution, it still had to be checked. If, however, he was hoping for a stay, he was disappointed and he was executed on schedule. Tragic. Excuse me. It wasn't until 2006 that the convictions of Scott and Springteen were overturned. Wow. Because the state appealed against the ruling and the pair weren't released until 2009, 10 years after they were put to jail. Wow. Forrest Welburn, alleged by the state to have been in a lockout while Springsteen, Pierce, and Scott committed the crime, remains scarred by his experience at the hands of Austin PD. Oh God. Oh wow. Maurice Pierce died in December 2010 when a routine traffic stop turned deadly. Soon after being pulled over by Officer Frank Wilson, and Wilson's partner Pierce fled the scene. Caught by Wilson, Pierce drew a knife and stabbed the officer in the neck. Wilson managed to draw his sidearm and fatally shoot Pierce. Wilson ultimately survived the stabbing. What is happening? Okay, stay away from Austin, Texas. Got it. What in the world? Other evidence still remains unsolved. 2 unidentified men were seen entering the shop shortly before the time of the crime. According to the 2 other customers, both credible witnesses who stopped in for yogurt sundaes, these men arrived shortly before the shop closed and remained after the door had been locked and the shop closed. It was common practice to close up around 10 minutes before 11 p.m., unlocking the door to allow any late customers to leave. Cold case detectives currently reviewing the case have yet to identify either of the men. DNA samples discovered at the scene match neither Scott nor Springsteen. Were the 2 unidentified subjects involved or just casual customers passing through? Unless they are found, the residents of Austin will likely never know what happened in the yogurt shop that night in 1991. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and apologize because I had no clue that was gonna be nearly as gory as it was. That was crazy. I was not prepared for that. Okay. Okay. This says, Lady of the Dunes was the unidentified Cape Cod murder victim in Extra in Jaws. She was found on July 26, 1974, lying face down on a beach towel in the dunes near Provincetown, Massachusetts. Her hands were missing, and small piles of pine needles were left in their place. Her head had been crushed and nearly severed from her body, possibly with some sort of military entrenching tool. Oh my God. Okay. Police suggested she should have died weeks before she could have died weeks before the July 26th discovery. With no clear way to identify her, the victim soon became known as the Lady of the Dunes. Who is she? Why was she slain so brutally? And who ended her life? Were all mysteries that remained unsolved to this day. When she was discovered, police conducted extensive searches of the surrounding dunes, combed through missing persons files, and compared tire tracks found near the scene of those countless vehicles. Yet they found nothing to explain the murder of the Lady of the Dunes. What we know about her, sadly, precious little. She was anywhere between 20 and 49 years of age. That's a massive age gap, like a humongous age gap to not know. A more precise identification made impossible by the condition of the body, though she had dental work, including expensive crowns done in what police called the New York style. Consultations with dentists have failed to yield any clues. Some of her teeth were removed, along with both of her hands and one forearm. Her head was nearly severed and was cushioned on a pair of carefully folded Wrangler jeans and a blue bandana. She was laid to rest in 1974, but had been exhumed several times in the years since. Facial reconstruction was performed in 1979. Her body was exhumed in 1980, again in 2000 for DNA testing. In 2010, her skull, which hasn't been re-interred with the rest of her body, was put through a CT scanner in order to produce more accurate facial reconstructions. In 2004, serial killer himself in his cell in May of 1974, before this lady was killed. Others attributed her death to the notorious mobster Whitney Bulger, who was known to have removed some of his victims' teeth, but no connection between this lady and Bulger had ever been established. Other leads have been followed, including a number of missing persons, roughly matching the age and description of the Lady of the Dunes. All of these leads had ultimately been ruled out. While investigators, both professional and amateur, have maintained and continued interest in the slaying, the case of the Lady of the Dunes has been cold since the 1970s. In August of 2015, Joe Hill, the son of the famous horror novelist, Joe Hill, son of the famous horror novelist Stephen King, and no sleuth of a horror writer himself, came forward with a new theory. He had been reading about the case in the Deborah Halber book, The Skeleton Crew, how amateur sleuths are solving America's coldest cases. Then he watched Jaws. At exactly 54 minutes and 2 seconds into the film, he'll notice something strange among the crowd. On the far left side of the screen stood a female extra dressed in jeans, a white t-shirt, and a blue bandana. She bore a striking similarity to the reconstructed images of Lady of the Dunes. Alright, I'm gonna show you guys. So this is the, reconstruction, right? And this is the woman from Jaws. So he says there's definitely, I can definitely see that. I also definitely think it's strange considering that there's a bandana and Wrangler jeans was put under her head. That's crazy. Okay. What if the young murder victim no one has ever been able to identify had been seen by hundreds of millions of people in the beloved summer classic, and they didn't even know they were looking at her? Hill asked in his August 2015 blog post, what if the ghost of the Lady of the Dune haunts Jaws? What if Jaws was filming near Martha's Vineyard, not far from Provincetown, in June of 1974, before the Lady of the Dunes met her ultimate end, her untimely end? I cannot read today. The film was a big deal in the area and attracted plenty of attention. Many locals showed up for the film's large crowd scenes, and it's entirely possible that the Lady of the Dunes was one of them. Extras were not tracked as carefully back then as they are today, and there's perhaps no way to know for sure who all these people were. Like so many things about the case, it provides another tantalizing mystery, rather than a tidy solution. I create fiction for a living, Hill points out on his own post. He later said that he initially thought that this was all this was. You're telling yourself a ghost story. But the theory has stuck around and was recently given new legs when it appeared again on the Wandering podcast, Inside Jaws, which explores the history and making of the film. Whether the woman Hill spotted in that brief crowd seen in Jaws turns out to be Lady of the Dunes, the theory had generated plenty of fresh interest in the case, and the lead investigator for the Provincetown police told the People magazine, anything that generates interest is always good. I mean, that's definitely true. Alright. What does it say? Okay. I don't want to, I've got a little bit, alright, let's do this one. So it says, William Desmond Taylor, Hollywood's favorite director. Oh god, I should have read that first. Oh wait, the shocking murder of William Desmond Taylor in Hollywood's silent era. He was one of the most prolific directors in Hollywood until he was fatally shot by an unknown killer in his Westlake home. Okay, you never know, because the directors in Hollywood, especially recently, are coming out with some crazy foolishness, so I was scared. Never mind, that should be okay. William Desmond Taylor was Hollywood's most prolific Irish director at the time, working behind the camera on some 60 movies and as an actor in some 27 more. He worked with some of the greatest actors and actresses of the silent era, including Mary Pickford, unsolved murder, but it was the fame of his shocking unsolved murder that would ultimately overshadow Taylor's cinematic career. Born William Cunning Dene Taylor in 1872, the man who would become William Desmond Taylor left Ireland for the United States in 1890, where he worked at a dude ranch in Kansas before moving to New York, where he married Ethel May Hamilton in 1901. They were married for almost 7 years before William abruptly disappeared, deserting his wife and young daughter. After his disappearance, it was revealed that he had suffered from mental lapses, and some of his friends thought that he might have wandered away while suffering from amnesia. William traveled through Canada and the northwestern United States until in 1912, he found himself in Hollywood. He had changed his name to William Desmond Taylor, and he quickly found work. So what was his name before? Oh, okay, so he went by all that original. Okay, gotcha. And he quickly found work as an actor before directing his first film, The Awakening, in 1914. The decade that elapsed between Taylor's arrival in Hollywood and his murder. He directed dozens of films and also served in the Canadian Expeditionary Force near the end of World War I. Okay. The morning of February 12th, no, oh my god, I'm gonna learn to read, I promise. February 2nd, 1922, Taylor's body was found in his bungalow in Westlake, Los Angeles by his valet, Henry Peavy. A crowd gathered quickly, and someone who identified himself as a doctor stepped forward and declared that Taylor had died of a stomach hemorrhage. When the police examined the body, however, they found that Taylor had been shot in the back with a small caliber pistol. The doctor vanished and was never seen again. It was only the first of several strange clues and unexplained disappearances that would plague this case. Taylor's wallet held $78 in cash, and he wore a 2-carat diamond ring, which would have seemed to discount the idea that the murder was a robbery gone bad. And yet the day before, Taylor had shown his accountant a large sum of money, which was nowhere to be found. The ensuing investigation became as much a matter for the papers as the police, and with many sensational and often inaccurate or downright fabricated newspaper reports coming out surrounding the murderer. Okay, so this is a paper from the time that says slain movie director's past life as a romance full of mysteries. Okay, gotcha. So the sensational, okay, so Robert Giro, a renowned book editor, publisher, and author of 1990s book about the murder, A Deed of Death, has been quoted saying that the studios seem to be fearful that if certain aspects of the case were exposed, it would exacerbate their problems. The police detective who worked this case claimed many years later that within the first week of the investigation, they got the word to lay off, perhaps due to these desires to hush up certain aspects of the crime. Much more of the physical evidence relating to the murder was lost either right away or over the intervening years. In spite of these setbacks, the police and press identified more than a dozen possible suspects in the killing. There was even one confession, though no one was ever charged, and the case remains officially unsolved to this day. While most of the suspects were ultimately cleared by the police, many of them present their own strange stories that could have come straight out of a film noir. So Edward Sands had worked as Taylor's valet until about 7 months prior to the murder, during which time he had forged Taylor's name on checks. Sands had even burglared Taylor's bungalow, leaving his footprints on the bed. For some, Sands was considered the most likely suspect, while for others, he's another victim of a larger conspiracy. In the wake of the murder, he was never seen or heard from again. So I'm assuming that's him right there. Okay. Henry Peavy took over as Taylor's valet after Sands and found the director's body while the police cleared him after intense questioning. The story goes that a reporter from the New York Daily News was convinced Taylor's grave in the Hollywood Park Cemetery. An accomplice had already gone ahead and was waiting at the gravesite draped in a white sheet. What? When Peavy approached, the sheeted accomplice claimed to be the ghost of Taylor and said, "You murdered me. Confess, Peavy." Unfortunately for them, Peavy saw right through their charade, thanks in no small part to the fact that they hadn't known that Taylor had a strong British accent, while the ghost was from Chicago. I'm sorry, there's something about somebody laying over a grave in a sheet that's making me kind of giggle. I'm not gonna lie, that's insane. Like, that's what you thought was gonna work. Sorry, I didn't mean to hit the mic. Alright, so this is Mabel Normand. A popular comedic actress, was said to have been a lover of Taylor's and is one of the last people to have seen him alive. While most have ruled her out as a suspect, she was, at the time, addicted to cocaine, and in an effort to help her kick her dependency, Taylor had recently met with federal prosecutors to assist them in charging her suppliers. Some have since theorized that Normand's suppliers may have hired a contract killer to take care of Taylor. So this is the girl right here. That's Normand. Or whatever her first name was. Mabel, sorry. Alright. Now we've got Mary Miles Minter. Was a former child star and prodigy of Taylor who was allegedly deeply in love with him. Passionate letters from Minter to Taylor were found in his bungalow, and many sources alleged a sexual relationship between the two that had begun when Minter was only 17 and Taylor was 47. Wow, okay. According to Minter's own statements, however, Taylor refused to reciprocate Minter's advances and said that he was too old for her. Okay, so he seems to have a little bit of sense. This was her. She was pretty. I'm assuming she's passed, but okay. Charlotte Shelby, Minter's mother, who many contemporary sources characterized as a manipulative and greedy woman, is the favorite suspect among many amateur detectives and true crime writers in this era since the murder. Circumstantial evidence connecting her to the killing is exacerbated by the fact she owned a rare gun similar to the one that killed Taylor, and after his murder, she threw it in the Louisiana bayou. And that's her mother right there. That is very circumstantial. How many people were in this? My God. Margaret Gibson, an actress who worked with Taylor when he first came to Hollywood, died of a heart attack in 1964. Having recently converted to Catholicism, she gave a deathbed confession to which she said is to having confessed, shot, and killed William Demond Taylor. This didn't hit the public until 1999. What? When it was printed in the newsletter Taylorology, devoted to collecting and transcribing newspaper articles and other accounts relating to the murder. That's kind of a big deal, no? And it took them, what, almost 30 years to tell the people. 35 years, right? Yeah, 35 years to tell someone after she died. That's insane. In spite of these and other suspects, the murder of William Demond Taylor remains a tale with more mysteries than solutions, and has left behind a legacy that influenced films like Sunset Boulevard and Hollywood Story, as well as dozens of true crime writers and Gore Vidal's novel Hollywood. We may never know what really happened to William Demond Taylor, and perhaps that's where much of our continued fascination with his death lies. These were insane. I have always wanted to do something like this. I was going to do one case, but I felt like mini cases were like kind of where it made more sense for me. I want to do cold cases that wound up being solved next. I don't know when that's going to be. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Actually, I mean, some of those were very, very dark, but I did enjoy reading those. I have gotten some requests. One thing I want to say, I saw a comment on the video from Friday, and it was someone asked for snapping. Okay, I can snap, yes. But I looked it up on other ASMR artists because I wanted to know how they were doing it. And some of these girls are like quadruple snapping. And I think it's because they've got what I call like stickier hands. Yo, I got a skin condition. My hands are dry. I don't have that like grippy skin. So I can snap. But it's weekend, so I'll do that video for sure, but it'll be lumped in to like hand sounds and other things, so that video will come out this week as well. I have some other cool ideas for this week.